Everything changes the moment Galino stops acting like a partner and starts moving like an owner. What we thought was help slowly turns into control, and by the time anyone realizes what is happening, M-Tex is no longer fighting for survival. It is fighting to breathe. Episode 7 is not about deals or negotiations anymore. It is about power, manipulation, and the terrifying moment when the wrong man gains access to everything. Galino is no longer knocking on the door. He is already inside. Section 1. From the very beginning of Landman Season 2, Galino has been playing a long and extremely patient game, but Episode 7 is where his true takeover begins to feel unavoidable. In earlier episodes, it looked like Galino was simply offering financial support at the perfect time, stepping in when M-Tex had no other option. But now, it is clear that every dollar he put on the table came with invisible strings attached. Galino did not just invest in M-Tex's future, he positioned himself at the center of its decision-making, slowly shifting the balance of power without anyone openly noticing. What makes this situation so dangerous is that Galino never uses force. He uses timing, trust, and emotional pressure. He understands that when people are desperate, they stop asking the right questions. And M-Tex is more desperate than ever. With massive debt hanging over the company and an impossible deadline closing in, every mistake feels fatal. Galino knows this. That is why in Episode 7, his presence starts to feel less like help and more like a shadow that follows every move M-Tex makes. The most unsettling part of Galino's rise is how naturally he blends into the leadership space. He does not demand authority. He earns it by being calm when others panic and confident when others hesitate. This makes people listen to him, even when they should not. His conversations are always polite, his tone always reasonable, but underneath that calm surface is someone calculating every outcome. Galino does not need to say he is in control. The fact that others begin to adjust their decisions around him proves that he already is. In Episode 7, this shift becomes impossible to ignore. Meetings feel different, decisions take longer, and the influence of M-Tex's original leadership starts to weaken, not because they are wrong, but because Galino has positioned himself as the only solution left. What makes this episode especially tense is the growing realization that Galino's interests do not fully align with M-Tex's survival. While everyone else is focused on saving the company, Galino seems focused on something much bigger. Control, influence, dependency. He wants M-Tex to need him not just now, but forever. And the smartest part of his strategy is that he never openly admits it. He lets the situation speak for itself. Every delay, every problem at the oil wells, every financial setback pushes M-Tex closer to him. And once a company becomes dependent, walking away is no longer an option. Episode 7 quietly shows us how dangerous that dependency has become. The people at M-Tex are no longer asking whether Galino should be involved. They are asking how they can survive without him, and that question alone proves he has already won half the battle. There is also a growing sense of isolation around key characters, especially those who still see Galino for who he truly is. As his influence expands, voices of caution begin to sound like obstacles rather than warnings. Anyone who questions Galino's intentions risks being pushed aside, ignored, or framed as a problem. This creates an environment where silence becomes safer than truth. Episode 7 captures this shift perfectly. The tension does not come from explosions or confrontations, but from quiet moments where characters realize they are losing control over their own company. Galino's takeover is not loud. It is slow, strategic, and terrifyingly clean. And by the end of this section of the story, one thing becomes as Galino's grip on M-Tex tightens, Episode 7 begins to feel like a slow descent into a trap that was set long ago. What makes this situation so frightening is that no single moment marks the takeover. Instead, it happens through a series of small shifts that seem harmless on their own, but become devastating when combined. Galino starts influencing not just financial decisions, but operational ones as well. He begins questioning timelines, suggesting alternative strategies, and subtly planting doubt about whether M-Tex's current leadership is capable of pulling the company out of crisis. These suggestions are never aggressive. They are framed as concern, as experience, as wisdom gained from years of success. And that is exactly why people listen. The more problems M-Tex faces, the more Galino's voice carries weight. His presence becomes a constant reminder that without him, failure feels almost guaranteed. One of the most intense aspects of Episode 7 is how pressure starts breaking down trust within M-Tex itself. When deadlines close in and money continues to disappear, suspicion naturally follows. People begin wondering who is making the wrong calls, who is slowing things down, and who might be responsible if everything collapses. Galino quietly benefits from this chaos. As internal trust weakens, his position strengthens. He does not need to attack anyone directly because the system starts turning on itself. Decisions that once felt united now feel divided. Conversations feel guarded, and every disagreement creates more space for Galino to step in as the calm mediator, the one person who seems unaffected by panic. But that calm is deceptive. Galino thrives in this environment. The more unstable M-Tex becomes, the more essential he appears. The oil wells themselves become a major source of tension in this episode. With so much riding on flawless execution, even minor setbacks feel catastrophic. And this raises an uncomfortable question that hangs over the entire episode. Are these failures purely accidental, or is someone quietly benefiting from them? While nothing is openly proven, the timing of these problems feels almost too perfect. Every delay pushes M-Tex closer to financial collapse, and every financial collapse strengthens Galino's leverage. What makes this even more disturbing is that Galino never needs to directly sabotage anything. All he has to do is allow pressure to do the work for him. In an industry where speed and precision matter, stress alone can be enough to cause irreversible damage. Episode 7 uses this reality brilliantly, turning ordinary operational problems into sources of intense suspense. At the same time, the emotional cost of this crisis becomes impossible to ignore. Characters who once believed they were in control now seem exhausted, constantly reacting instead of planning. Their confidence fades as Galino's certainty grows. The power dynamic has clearly shifted. What was once a partnership now feels like a dependency, and that dependency is starting to define every decision M-Tex makes. Episode 7 forces the audience to confront a terrifying truth. Sometimes the most dangerous villains are not the ones who threaten you openly, but the ones who convince you that you cannot survive without them. And as Galino continues to position himself as the only path forward, it becomes clear that M-Tex is no longer just fighting external pressures. While Galino's influence grows inside M-Tex, Episode 7 also makes it clear that his plans extend far beyond the boardroom. His strategy is not limited to money or contracts. It is deeply personal. Galino understands that controlling people is often more effective than controlling companies, and this episode shows him tightening his grip on the individuals who matter most. Relationships that once felt strong begin to crack under pressure, and Galino is always there at the exact moment when doubt is strongest. He listens, he advises, and he positions himself as someone who truly understands. But every conversation serves a purpose. Every emotional connection becomes another thread in the web he is building around M-Tex. The tension between Tommy and Cammy reaches a critical point in this episode. The stress of the company's situation has already pushed them to their limits, and Galino knows exactly how to exploit that weakness. He does not openly turn them against each other. Instead, he encourages silence, caution, and appearances. By pushing the idea that internal conflict must never be visible, he creates emotional distance rather than unity. What makes this so dangerous is that unresolved doubt does not disappear, it grows. And as Tommy and Cammy struggle to stay aligned, Galino quietly steps into the emotional gap between them. He becomes the one Cammy leans on when certainty fades, and that shift may be the most powerful move he makes in Episode 7. At the same time, Cooper's situation begins to look far more troubling than it first appeared. What once seemed like a promising opportunity now feels like another carefully designed trap. Galino's involvement in Cooper's deal raises serious concerns about control and long-term consequences. Cooper's inexperience makes him vulnerable, and Episode 7 subtly highlights how easily optimism can be turned into dependency. The pressure to perform, combined with the fear of failure, puts Cooper in a position where walking away feels impossible. And Galino knows this. He does not rush the process. He allows the pressure to build naturally. confident that debt and obligation will do the work for him. The more Cooper struggles, the more tightly he becomes bound to Galino's terms. Rebecca's storyline adds another layer of suspense to this episode. As someone deeply involved in improving the efficiency of the oil wells, she represents a real threat to Galino's control. Knowledge is power, and Rebecca has both the skill and the insight to expose weaknesses in his strategy. Episode 7 strongly suggests that this makes her a target. Problems begin emerging in areas connected to her work, and the timing raises serious questions. If trust in Rebecca starts to collapse, it would not just damage her reputation, it would remove one of the last obstacles standing in Galino's way. The emotional weight of this possibility is heavy, especially as Rebecca begins to sense that something is wrong, but cannot yet prove it. What makes Section 3 of Episode 7 so intense is how helpless everything feels. There are no clear villains in the room, no dramatic confrontations that bring relief. Instead, the danger exists in